Now that we've looked at custom authentication, which is pretty simple and you have full control over, let's take a look at another authentication system. This is the one that's offered by Google, and it's controlled through JavaScript and HTML. This allows you to allow people or use Google's accounts to actually authenticate to your site. So there's a couple of steps involved, and we're going to work through some of the screenshots and give you pointers to exactly where you use these things. So step one is you need to get a client ID, and there are instructions. There's a link right here, consoles.developers.google.com/APIs. There you can get direct access to setting up your credentials necessary to actually have an authentication system that uses the Google login on your site. So from there, there's a button at the top, you can see it. You create credentials and you want an OAuth client ID. And this is going to create an ID for you. So you can then get into, you want a web application. This is what you're going to use this for, at least for these purposes. Give it a good name. You can give this something that makes sense for your client, so it doesn't have to necessarily be exactly your application ID, but it's something you want to keep track of. You want to add the URLs for your application. So if this is a web application in App Engine, you're going to use your application ID.appspot.com. Create that, and then you'll get a client ID and a client secret. Now you want to note those, and so you can use those later. You might want to download the JSON because that will have the data in it, but you can take a look at this. Then you configure your screen. So there's a link here to configure your authorization screen, and this is what's going to show up to the user when you actually when they go to your site and need to authenticate. Then you're going to use the Google JavaScript library, so you can access this directly. You can see here script source, and then we're going to pull it in from accounts.google.com/gsi/client. So that part is pretty easy. You just need that one line, and then you need to configure your code. So this is a little tool that will allow you to generate the code necessary so that you can actually include this in your page. So you can you can have a URL handle this. You can actually have a JavaScript callback handle this, and this will allow you to send the messages to the Google authentication and then get those messages back. So when you test it for your application, you'll see something like this dialog show up for authentication. And in the example that we have, this is just going to have a callback that's going to output the information. So you can see once I've authenticated and I get back to my page, it's simply going to output this to the JavaScript console. So you can take a look at this example. All of the code is out there. You can get into it and actually see what's actually operating there. You can see the callback function. You can see how all of this is executing, running the login using the JavaScript source, and also outputting the results from the object that you get back in that callback. So this should give you an idea how to operate this. Now there are some other APIs available, such as Firebase Authentication. There's a whole lot of instructions in the slides there if you want to get into that. Facebook login is another option. There's a Twitter login. There's about a dozen different login services. I'd say that between Firebase Authentication, Facebook login, Twitter, and the Google sign-in, that probably covers a lot of your options. Again, it's going to be simpler, and you're going to have more control if you choose to build a custom authentication system, and I've found that most of my students have taken that approach. However, all of these options are available to you, and I think that any of them will work for the needs for your website. So hopefully this will give you an idea. Take a look at the code in the GitHub. That may be useful and instructive. Otherwise, thank you for watching.